So I'm going to start out with a story about another tornado, and really the reason why I wanted to get involved in this project in the first place. And so I'm originally from a small town in southwest Missouri called Joplin, Missouri. And in 2001, Joplin, Missouri had one of the deadliest tornadoes in the United States history record. And so I grew up in Tornado Alley. I was used to huddling in the back of stores with my mom whenever tornado season approached, and there was always some kind of tornado that was going through, and we just kind of hoped and prayed that it wasn't very destructive and that no one got hurt. The thing that was interesting after I moved away from Missouri is when that tornado happened, and it was an F5 that went through and it killed something like 580 people, injured over 1,000. The people who live there are used to tornadoes. They happen year after year, mostly smaller, right? But what was interesting is in all of those years, when people would come together, we didn't really band together and collect stories from that time. We didn't really take what people experienced and then, shared that so that we could build on it for the next year. And it wasn't until this tornado that was an F5 that was so deadly, where there were people coming from all over the United States to report on it. It wasn't until then where people really thought about recording these stories and holding on to them and putting books out about them and trying to learn about that so that they could find the themes and prepare for the future. So, moving to Wenonah, where I was assured that tornadoes never happen. This was just months after we had moved in. And so 2021, we move in. Tornadoes never happen in Wenonah. I remember very well having a meeting upstairs in my office, a Zoom meeting. Do you hear stuff hitting against the wall? Yeah, I do. But don't worry, they don't happen in Wenonah. I went downstairs. I'm glad that you're here, Brian, for this. My husband, Brian, was in the kitchen putting a pizza in the oven. And he said, yeah, the wind's really picking up. And I go to my door, and I look out the front door window, and I turned around, and I said, get downstairs. This is it.
This is it.
This is it. He likes to make fun of it. This is it. Get downstairs. There's just something about it that I thought, yeah, this is definitely something that's different. And he decided, true New Jersey spirit, to just continue to deal with the pizza. He was like, I don't want the pizza.
You gotta eat it, summertime.
Yes, yes. So native New Jersey. So anyway, when that happened and we saw, that outpouring of support and the community coming together, and I mean, it was just absolutely amazing to see how so many people were, neighbor after neighbor, people coming by to check on each other. And the electricity being out for so long, and neighbors saying, come over, you can eat with us, we'll take care of, you can stay with us. I thought, this is really a great opportunity to collect some stories and to maybe figure out, with this trajectory of severe weather coming through, even if it's not a tornado, we probably should try to learn some themes and collect the stories about this wonderful coming together of the community, and then figure out how we can continue to band and grow stronger in the future. So with that was a mouthful. I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about Wenonah. Just for those of you, I know this is a historical society, so you probably know the hundreds of years, but just so that we can put everything into context, this idea of having 289 households, that we have around 2,283 as our population, and that a lot of our land here is conservation land, right? Over 21%. This comes into play later when we start to collect the stories and find out about residents who were so overwhelmed by the loss of trees and the concern for the habitat. Obviously, for a long time in the history of Wenonah, we've cared about the environment that we live in. And so this also figured very heavily into what we heard from residents in the survey that we did, and also in the aftermath of the community coming together. And I'm sorry, I have this as a video because I have a few videos in here later. So it's a little bit different than a typical slideshow. All right, so what happened September 1st? If you were here, you remember it. Where were you? I checked the calendars about 554 days ago. So if you are starting to just now feel like you can have some wind hitting your house and you're not getting nervous, anybody? No, you're still getting nervous? Yeah. Okay. Our area was hit by a strong F3 tornado, and it touched down. When it first touched down, it didn't touch down in Wenonah. It first touched down at 6:10, and we know that tornadoes move fast, and it moved through our area very quickly. One of the videos that I took of that day was like 6:33, and I'm walking outside after everything's happened. So things happened very quickly. More than 204 properties in Wenonah were damaged, the largest number of any municipality hit by the tornado, by this particular tornado. So how many of you were in Wenonah? How many of you sitting here tonight were in Wenonah when the storm hit? Oh yeah. So this is like a therapy session. We can all hug after. It'll be nice. Okay. So we know those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it, by Winston Churchill. But it's always good to remind ourselves that that's why we want to learn from this, right? So, okay. All right, so what were the goals? So the project goals, we wanted to document the event for the future. We wanted to actually collect the facts, the figures, the media coverage. We wanted to collect this for the future because while everybody was excited and they were like sharing everything on social media and all of this, we know that that's gone. Later, websites go down. The pictures get put in somebody's closet, or they get lost, somewhere in the ether of the internet, and you don't know where you have them, where they're stored. We rarely look back. We wanted to identify themes for leaders to prepare for future events, and we also wanted to share what we learned with Wenonah's residents and with Wenonah's leaders. Residents and leaders, yes. And who were we? Who are we? So Linda Snock, she was a part of this group, survey questions, chief editor of all the content that was going out there, took a good look. And I should say that not all of our members of the task force are here tonight, but a few of them are. And so if any of the task force members have anything to add along the way, please feel free. Kepler Galat, he actually was the website developer for the website and put together the survey design. I was the project chair and story collector. Melissa was the survey, she handled survey questions and story leads. And then Carolyn and Jagwash, photographs and artifacts collectors. But really we all worked on everything together. We got together and really talked about all of this as it developed. All right. So weird having it be. So here's a more fun quote. Luck is a very thin wire between survival and disaster, and not many people can keep their balance on it. By Hunter S. Thompson. So that's the thing. It's the thin wire. Where is it between making it through and then figuring out how we can prevent something from being worse in the future? So this was fact gathering and story collecting. We wanted to gather facts through a survey, so that was more quantitative. We wanted to collect stories, so it was more qualitative. We wanted to have a blend of both so that we could tell the stories, keep the stories, and really share that impact of the community coming together, along with getting some facts and figures behind, where were you when it happened? What kind of damage did you sustain, if people were willing to share that? How did you hear about this? What was the most effective method of communication? I'm shaking. Okay. I'm so nervous. Why am I nervous in front of you all more than I am with you? Anyway. Okay, so this was, let me go back. This was, let me go back. Okay. Okay. Sorry. So what we did was we created a website, and we also pulled together pictures and documentation. You might recognize some of these things from scenes that you saw around town, or some of the media that was covering what was going on. The media was everywhere. Media trucks were up and down. They really liked, is Joanne in here? I saw Joanne earlier. Really liked Joanne's house. And we saw things like the Wenonah Strong sign. We saw the big pieces of wood, and we're still having trees that are being taken down, and chainsaw needs that are still being dealt with to this day, and it's years down the road. Well, 554 days to be exact. So Jack and Carol Ann, they sent several pictures. This is by no means comprehensive, but since we have limited time tonight, they're just sort of representative of some of the pictures that we have. And then John Dominy, who had a collection of pictures, and I don't know if everyone's seen this, but hopefully we can make the slideshow available to people later. And you can go and find some of these links and some of these places where you can get more of these resources. Okay. So what we had emergency responders, both local and from long distances, helping our residents, and we tried to keep them nourished. We had civic groups, churches, other local organizations coming together to organize a way to give the help that was needed. And local residents found ways to help in meaningful ways. That sounds good. So, you're going to hear from a couple of these people in a little bit. We had the civic groups task force at the meeting at the library. How many of you stopped by the library at some point to either donate goods or sign up for help or something like that in the days after the tornado? Can you see a show of hands? Yeah. Even if you didn't have a need, or you didn't need to stop there, or maybe you just dropped something off, how good did it feel when you were driving past there and seeing the community come together? It's a highly visible way for everyone to show that they were there. There was a place to go. And for people who weren't connected on social media, that was something that came through in the survey. That was a really meaningful way for them to know that there was a place to get help. Not everybody's on Facebook, believe it or not. And so the people who weren't really appreciated the fact that they could go down the street and literally see a place where you could stop and clearly ask questions. So that was something that ended up being really helpful. I had an interview with Vicki McCall, and during the interview she talked about this hashtag Give Help, Get Help idea of the different groups, American Legion, the Lions Club, coming together. And that was really a representation of a larger group of the civic organizations and the churches and the community that came together to help. All right. I would be ridiculously remiss if I did not mention Sarah Harbold's amazing help. Sarah, hi, I'm so glad you're here. Yay! So I had to go on because I knew that we were talking tonight, and all of the reports from back when we were initially collecting this stuff was like, by now, the GoFundMe that Sarah Harbold set up, that's collected over $38,000, and by now, at least on the site, and I believe it's come in other ways too, but on the GoFundMe site, as of earlier, it was $55,635. And that was something that a resident, that Sarah, you're amazing, but you know, this you didn't have to do it, did you?
Well, no, but it was just a means for people who lived in Wenonah before, who wanted to do, or, can't shovel or do whatever, just a means that, here, you can help out, give them help in one way or another. So I was more focused with plantings and trying to restore the park and to help the other organizations that wanted to do the same thing. And it all is about money. And, the borough doesn't have that kind of surplus. So it was just a vehicle to have other people recognize that they wanted to help, and here, this is how I can do it.
Right.
And that's all it was.
Well, and then we had apparel, right, to show support. We were buying the apparel, and I think Carol Ann, would you mind standing up and showing? I think you're wearing one of the wonderful T-shirts from the Wenonah Planning Fund. You don't have to stand up, but we have a fashionable way to show that we were actually representing Wenonah and giving back. And this was something that you were out there, Sarah, whenever we were getting together for any reason, meeting in the park to clean up anything, out there leading the charge, giving signs out, giving the QR code out where people could go and could.
I brought cards.
We can all continue giving. It's all about giving. All right. And this is something that was one of those things that I didn't want to be forgotten too. As we were collecting stories, and by the way, those of you who are artisans and musicians and people who have created things as a result, either inspired by or directly influenced by the tornado and what happened there. Evan and Phoenix Brooks, they held an open mic on their porch to give some community entertainment and support through art. And residents showed up. I was there for a little bit. I think I saw Gustavo and David there. There were different people who were showing up for that, just to get together as a community and to experience that together. And that was another one of those things that I think could easily get lost in the background, that people would forget, but it was a meaningful thing at the time. All right. So I'm going to talk about the survey, because you're going to actually read some things that you and your neighbors, if you filled out the survey, said. Some of the feedback that we got, your own experiences that were captured. So what are some of the themes before I go through some of the responses that we got? Sense of community coming together, no big surprise, gratitude for local civic emergency and government response, and desire for a better non-social media way to communicate. One of the things that we heard was that the social media was great. It's not that they didn't want it, but that we needed something else in addition for the people who didn't communicate that way. All right. But don't believe me, believe what you all said. This is about your responses. So this person said, we took the dog, the 2 cats, and 2 beers into the basement. This was in response to, where did we go? How did we ride out the storm? Some people said that they found a closet. Some people said that they went to, ended up in a bathtub. They ended up in a room with no windows. These people were very kind to give us exactly what they thought was a priority. The next response. Having a centralized location for information. The library was a good spot. Not everybody has Facebook. FEMA was a low point. If I had to put a 4th theme, that would have been one too. Okay. I found the control center at the library very helpful. Many things were donated and useful. Having food and water for the volunteers was very important, and we took advantage of it. We're grateful for the food trucks and churches that donate food and water because it helped us stay gassed up for the work we have to do. We remain amazed at the change in the landscape, especially the damage to the trees in Gloucester County. The poor trees remain a constant reminder of the force of nature, but most of all, the compassion and camaraderie that we experienced in helping and seeing people help others was something I will never forget. Before I move on to the next one, how many of you found yourselves volunteering more after the tornado came through town? Raise your hand if you did. I'm just curious, because there's an interesting thing that happens psychologically when you go through something that's sort of traumatic. And it's a time when you start to reevaluate. We've all kind of gone through this social experiment of the pandemic, right? And we've reevaluated how we feel about our social contracts, how we feel about interacting with each other as neighbors, what we spend our time doing. Maybe we spend more time with family than we used to. And same thing with tornadoes, you know, any sort of natural disaster. When you go through an experience where you're facing a lot of, maybe you're facing financial loss or you're dealing with a lot of stress, that's a time when you begin to reevaluate what your priorities are. And it's not uncommon to see people spend a little bit more time giving back in the wake of something like a tornado. They did this in Joplin a lot too. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. Okay. So this was a response too. And I want you to know that at any time you can fill out the survey. The survey is still up. You can still go and fill this out. So if you didn't do it before, there are links at the end of this. I want you to go and fill it out if you haven't yet filled it out, because we're still collecting. I just got some pictures earlier tonight. We're still collecting artifacts. And so we really want to make sure that this is something that we capture before it's forgotten in the sands of time. So this was when I heard the warning, I casually thought I should follow the warning and headed to the basement thinking it would be 10 minutes and over. Then came a second and a third warning, so I stayed away from the windows and took it more seriously. The sound of a freight train was the exact sound, and then I heard a huge thump of broken windows and swishing sounds, which I later realized were my neighbor's pine tree limbs hitting the side of my house. I was afraid to come up to see the damage. Is this bringing back anything for some of you? Like I said, it's free hugs after this, so, all right. The volunteer activity within the town was awe-inspiring. Would have been willing to help, but didn't know what resources were needed or how to offer assistance. Perhaps a mass email, text, or phone call via Borough Hall. So I received messages, I was signed up, you know, I feel like I had a lot of communication coming in. I'm tapped into social media too. So I felt like I heard a lot. I was getting the information I needed, but clearly not everybody did. So is there something more that we can do? Is there more that we can do to get the word out so that people have some sort of idea about where to go? Maybe proactively, before we go into storm season, we should put things out there to our neighbors, maybe through the mail or delivering them. We're 1 square mile, right? We established this at the beginning. Maybe we can do a better job of letting each household know the different ways that they can receive that kind of information. Oops, moved ahead. Let's go back here. Not too far. All right. And then, I like how the mayor of the borough communicated through mass phone calls, text, social media, and email. I felt like that was extremely helpful. Anybody who puts out surveys identifies when this happens, right? The same thing that one person's complaining about is the same thing that somebody's saying is excellent. That's always a good sign that there's something that it's like, well, maybe we pay attention to one and just kind of take the other one in stride. I don't know. All right. So key figures. One thing that the group did is we spent a lot of time trying to get together and figure out who should we talk to, who should we ask for interviews, who should we make sure fills out the survey. And this was just the first list that came through, and I didn't want to bore you with all of the details, but this was the primary list we started out with and worked from. If you don't see your name on here and you say, I was really active and I want my time, fill out the survey. Give us your information. We asked for this. So you'll have a chance to give more information and make sure that we capture your role or the part that you played in this whole endeavor. But just to list off some of the obvious, so we've got John Dominy, Richard Black, Ryan Nicholson, Tim Nessler, Gary Odenbrett, John Foran, Jen Kesey, Vicki McCall, Scott Barnes, Jack Sheppard Jr., Lions Club of Wenonah, Wenonah Library, that was Mike Sanchez, Ann Zuber, Dave Cox, and Sarah Harble, of course, yes. I say of course because it's like, you know.
Literally, my home was 200 feet away from a major.
So this is the voice of Gary Odenbrett, chairman of the Shade Tree Commission. I just have a little clip from this interview that we did. Now, you'll see when you go through the survey, and then also on the links at the end of this presentation, a way that you can book 15 to 30 minutes to have your interview recorded. You can still do this, all right? And this is not just for the town leaders, this is also for anyone that has a story to share that wants it captured for posterity. And so, but this is just a clip taken from one of the interviews that we did.
It crossed the railroad tracks on the north side of the community center and then headed into what we consider the northeast quadrant, which is by the Wenonah School and that whole area. So northeast, North Clinton, North Marion, Maple, and then the extensions of those streets beyond Maple. So we went in and inventoried that area also and created a database of information for us to use in the future with regards to replanting. A lot of my time, because I didn't want to get in the way of a lot of the contractors that were authorized to come in, is I went over to the library and just grabbed cases of water and then just drove around and tried to link up with as many of the utility people as I could, because it was still a warm period. It was September 1st. And so I did my best to just hand out as much water and say thank you as many times as I could without getting in the way. It was really after the first week that we were able to get in full to do our inventory of what was lost. And that has helped us in the replanting efforts that we've undertaken since December of 2021.
Okay. So, and this, I actually had a longer conversation with him. I think it went about 50 minutes, almost an hour. And really, really helpful to get the stories like that, talking about what was it like in the beginning, right after it happened, and how long did it take you to really assess the damage? And now that a little bit of time's passed by, you know, what's happening as a result, and where are things going? What are you seeing for the future? And it's really helpful to get interviews like this done because, and all of these are transcribed so that we have those shared in a shared folder so that we can hold on to those digitally and save them for future residents and figure out what we can do with this information, but also capture these stories. Now, Vicki, I see you, and this is a fabulous interview that I did with Vicki McCall. You know, very involved with a lot of the activity right after everything happened. This is a little clip from my...
I would like to just point out, you called me while I was sick.
I called you what? What's that?
I had COVID when you called. Remember? I'm like, oh.
Okay, so anything that she says, we have to remember it is through a lens of COVID.
Exactly.
All right, that is true.
A task force got together with Women's Club, the Lions Club, American Legion, and we met at the library, met with a librarian, and that was kind of our central point to set up. And we agreed that we had a lot of volunteers in these three organizations that were of age appropriate to be able to physically help and get out there and do whatever we could do. So we kind of split it up into a became a hashtag get help, hashtag give help. So we had volunteers that came in, and it started out with Women's Club was going to basically set up the tent, manage to get supplies donated, and start a sign-up list. Who needs help? Who wants to give help? And from that, the Legion decided they would go and do chainsaw, because the American Legion has a lot of boy toys and they're very good at it. And then the Lions Club agreed to do debris removal, and the library was our central point. It worked out fantastic. We basically met, I believe, the next day or within a day. And it started out as, just shooting out emails to everybody who can show up. We brought it there, and we had a table and some paper, and it took on a life of its own. We ended up with, I'm going to say, over thousands of volunteers from all over, not just from the clubs, but from other towns, from churches. We had an incredible team of logistics coordinators, and we had an intake person. They would just go and see, what are you here for? Do you need help, or you want to give help? And depending on who that was, they transferred them to another person. And we had someone doing intake sheets, and they took in every name of every person that showed up and what they needed, what they wanted to do. Within a week, we were up to, 3 tents, and the amount of in-kind donations that came in between feeding everybody, providing meals, water, tarps, wood, chainsaws. Borelli's chainsaw came and volunteered their time to sharpen all the chainsaws and bring supplies needed, oil, gas. It was an incredible undertaking. Worked with OEM and getting them the names of each volunteer organization and what they anticipated the hours involved were. And it really came up to well over, I think, 4,000 total hours of time.
All right. So amazing, right? I mean, and this again was just a little sampling of some of the information captured. But what I want to do, again, I want to promote the fact that you can set up some time and schedule some time to record your own memories, your own experiences, 15 to 30 minutes. If you don't want to schedule a video, but you just want to make sure that your audio or your story is captured, you can write it. You can capture it on audio and send it. As long as we are able to get it in some sort of format, it's really up to you and how you feel the most comfortable. But in this way, we can make sure that we get as many stories as possible from everyone before we all forget it. So before I move to the next slide, are there any questions so far about what we've talked about?
Can I just interject 2 things?
Yes.
These 2 got so underrated. Voorhees, Craig Voorhees retired, that's the Borelli. Voorhees, if you're a contractor in South Jersey, a landscaper, you know Craig. He sold his business. He came out of retirement to sharpen our chains. And he brought all free chains for everybody. It was amazing. Those things are really expensive. But also, Nashville Lowe's, they gave $3,000 of equipment to us. That, I mean, and they didn't even ask for a thank you. And then, after doing that, 2 weeks later, they showed up with 50 paid employees.
Yeah.
So, Lowe's shirts. So, I mean, really, unbelievable.
Yeah, and
Let's share that story.
I just think.
And if you have stories like that too, you want to make sure, there was no way we could fit in all of what we've, received as far as feedback, but we are trying to upload everything to the website so that you can go through, see what's collected, see what interviews we've done so far, and see the photos and things like that. If you have photos, somebody just gave me photos tonight to look through. If you have videos, you can share those as well, and we can get those uploaded.
Yes. And I don't know if people know, but Telemundo came actually to interview me, and I did a whole interview in Spanish, and it was actually distributed not only in the Philadelphia area, it was broadcast in Philly, but it was also went to South America, and it came all the way to Brazil, where my country is. So our tornado became famous worldwide, and I don't know if you guys know that. So unfortunately, it wasn't a happy, story, but it was amazing that Telemundo made that, distributed across, abroad.
Well, I want to build on that. I actually think it was, in a way, a happy story because the way that people were talking about Wenonah. So we went to, I'm going to reveal a little bit about myself here and say, you're at a home goods store, and I was in shopping in one of the aisles, and I heard two women talking in the other aisle. They were like, "Oh, did you hear about what happened to Wenonah? Oh, yes, but did you know?" And they were saying that it's just amazing how everyone's been coming together. Oh, they really have been fighting it together. What a great community. And I'm like in the aisle, listening. I don't know, I can't help hearing. But I was listening to it and I was really proud. I was really proud to be from Wenonah and that everyone really was showing up for each other in such a way. And so I think it was good. And I think that the fact that people were hearing stories like that, it reflected a lot about the spirit of this town and why a lot of us moved here and why a lot of us continue to want to live here. Anyone else have a story? How many of you, with the links provided, how many of you are going to submit some information or think you might submit some information after you leave here? Just show of hands. Raise them. Oh, come on, really? No. Oh. What?
I'll add the pizza recipe.
Yeah, I'll give you Brian's pizza recipe, why he was willing to risk his life and limb. Okay. All right. So part of what we talked about was part of our challenge was to collect the stories, right? And part of it was to do this survey. So we still have the survey going. We really, it is a small town. We don't have that many households to cover, but it really would be great to get a good comprehensive feel. We have, I think, approaching 90 surveys that have been filled out. We can do better than that, right? We had more people sign up for the Native Plant Garden Club, and so I think we can fill out more surveys. But our challenge is this: what do we do after we've been through this experience and we've collected these stories? Well, more severe storms are likely to come to southern New Jersey. I hate to break it to you, but according to climate research from Rutgers and many other places besides that, but I do have links to some of these studies, it's not going to be a surprise if we continue to get strong winds, if we continue to see severe storms. So how can we better prepare? How will we be better prepared in the future? It's not just enough to not stick around waiting for the pizza and to go downstairs. We need to probably think about how we can fortify better and protect ourselves. Certainly, I know we have a better idea about how to deal with insurance probably at this point. And what can be done to better prepare as a community? One of the things we heard that was pretty consistent is there was this concern about, a lot of people were happy with the communication that they got, but there is something we can do that's better because there was a little bit of a lag in people figuring out where to go, especially if they weren't connected to social media. So what can we do about that, and who needs to be involved? All right. So what can you do? Share your experience. So first up, the easiest way to do this, to not have to talk to anybody if you're an introvert or you just don't want to talk to me, it's totally fine. Survey, fill out the survey, and it's the bit.ly link, Tornado Survey 2021. And if you go there, you can fill out the survey. It also prompts you to fill in information, answering questions about, where did you ride out the storm? What kind of protection did you have? What kind of damage did you have? Where did you hear the warnings? Where did you hear the warnings? How did you hear about it? And who helped you? And it gives you a chance to fill in some information in some of your stories as well. Document. If you have stories, videos, pictures, things that art, there are a couple of people who told me that they were creating new art that was based off of either debris that they found, a lot of those, like the pieces of greenhouse that everybody had and lodged in their everything. They were creating things out of that. So if you have examples, pictures of that, we're also collecting that information. And you can email that. And then if you want to be interviewed, you can schedule your 15 to 30 minute interview. 2021 tornado story, it's a bit.ly link, 2021 tornado story. And that is a Calendly link which will allow you to select a time that is also matching my calendar where we can record that. And if you're worried about being on video, this is a Zoom call that we do. It's really, we're just capturing the audio. It's just a chance that we can, collect your stories and then be able to upload that later. Okay. So, let's see. I think we got one more. Oh yeah. Some important links. At the end of this, I have the tornadoes survey, the documentation project, where you can see some of these things that we've already done. And as we're uploading some of these stories, you can go to wenonahtornadoproject.org. Kepler, who's not here tonight, is uploading photos, even before I was heading over here, and it's just the idea that more people will be looking at the website was motivation enough. So the more that you give us, the more that we can be motivated to upload. And then this is the link for how you can schedule time to get your interview done, the Shade Tree Commission, and Wenonah Tree Planting Fund information. All right. And this is presented by me, 554 days since the tornado hit Wenonah. And we will take any questions or any comments. I guess we've got about 6 minutes, so I timed it well. Carol Ann and Jack Wesh, who are both also part of the task force, are up here too. So even though I did a lot of talking, they can also answer a lot of questions and share their experiences as well. So,
I just want to commend Kiki because she did put this whole thing together, and we met via Zoom weekly, and then we kind of went every 2 weeks, so it was always on our calendar. Is it Wednesday night?
Still on my calendar.
is it still on your calendar?
I don't know how to remove it.
It's a little challenge, tech challenge.
Well, you're always thinking of me though, right?
But
I
Kiki,
save everybody.
That's how she gets her hooks in you.
How we got married.
It's true.
but Kiki really did put a lot of effort in this, and the committee was great. We made a lot of connections through the Zoom meeting, and it was scary because I think some of us were here a lot of us were here for the straight line winds in 15, and we may not have been impacted, but we heard those winds, and to hear a tornado, I've lived in New Jersey my whole life, I've never been through a tornado until that day, and even these winds we've been having lately, I don't like it. Because we're getting more winds because of the climate, but also we don't have the trees to protect us anymore. So we hear the train louder, and we always heard the train, but nothing like now because there's
It's ear-piercing in many.
and we're a block away from it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of changes in the town, but I agree with Kiki. The town people have been wonderful. Our son who moved out of town a few years ago, he came back. That really melted my heart because he came in, he said, Mom, I'm coming, I have my chainsaw, I'm going to go help out. And he gave up 2 of his days to do that because it was over that holiday weekend. So that shows you that his heart's still in Wenonah.
I want to say thanks to Carol Ann and to Jack and to Linda, who's not here, and to Kepler and to Melissa, because they all met with me and we worked on this and pulled together information and were fabulous. And this was really quick, like it happened so soon after I moved here, so I really didn't know hardly anyone. And so they were wonderful in telling me who to talk to, who was in charge of things, and where all of this, where we could get this information. And so it couldn't have happened, you know, without everyone. All right.
Great job.
Thank you.